The 2026 season, Jonathan Bam Rivers giving you bold predictions. Don't know why I just spoke in third person right there. Let's have some fun, though. So, again, I like to forecast certain things. In the NFL, you have to really look at different metrics. You have to look at different situations. And you have to look at how divisions play out. What transpires in the previous year may not always transpire in the following year. And I think that has a lot to do with where I'm going. So the first bold prediction I have for this coming season is that the Cleveland Browns, that's right, the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs. There will be a lot of people that look at me and say, are you outside of your mind? The Cleveland Browns have one of the worst offensive lines in football. They're not going to make the playoffs. Again, you're taking a Polaroid and you're looking at that Polaroid even 5 days later, understanding the information may change. But I understand that sentiment. But to some people who think that the Cleveland Browns don't care about the offensive line, they went out and signed Titus Howard, right, from the Texans. They went out and got Elgton Jenkins, former Packer, and they went out and got Zion Johnson. So they took a page out of the playbook of the Chicago Bears with Ben Johnson. They took a page out of the playbook of the Denver Broncos of trying to solidify this offensive line. So Cleveland, one, knows that. But I also say this. You may say, even with those moves, Bam, I don't think Cleveland's going to be good. I think their offensive line is going to be shaky. They don't have any knowledge of who their quarterback's going to be. They're not going to make the playoffs. And I'll answer this twofold. Number one, you may assume that teams have to have top-tier offensive lines to make the playoffs. Would I want a top-tier offensive line? Absolutely. But in 2025, the Green Bay Packers made the playoffs with the 23rd ranked offensive line in football. The Houston Texans were just an average game away from C.J. Stroud. He didn't even have to be great. He just didn't have to be as poor as he was from the AFC Championship game, and they were the 27th ranked offensive line in football. And the Super Bowl champion, Seattle Seahawks, who had a top 2 defense in the NFL, one of the best running games in the NFL, and a quarterback who played at high levels when they needed him to most, had the 15th ranked offensive line. So they were middle of the pack. So middle of the pack and even some of the worst offensive lines in football get into the tournament and are able to compete for a Super Bowl. I will say that typically you want a top-tier offensive line. But when you have a defense like Seattle had, which presumably the Browns can have because they have all pros like Myles Garrett and Quincy Williams that they went and got from the Jets. Very underrated move that I've heard nobody talking about, but we're talking about it on Move the Change. That can help solidify a defense. You've also got Carson Schlesinger, who was the 2025 Defensive Rookie Player of the Year. They've got ballers. And because we focus so much on the quarterback spot in Cleveland, we sort of put aside everything else that they're doing. Andrew Berry has been very good in the draft and very good in free agency and hasn't been great on the offensive line. But this is why they went out and did what they did this offseason. Cleveland, with Todd Monken, they have a lot of questions to answer, but what I'm telling you is there are a lot of cheat sheets in the building that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. All right, my next bold prediction, and I already know people are going to look at me crazy when I say this, and I don't care because this is what I truly feel. The NFC South will be the best division in football in 2026. I said it. And I say it for a multitude of reasons. It's sort of like the turnover differential, or it's sort of like penalties one season. There are certain things that I can't assume will be the exact same one year to the next. I just can't. Do you know that the NFC South, as a total, these 4 teams had 19 total losses that were within 1 score? Then you had 3 teams in the division that were 8-9. So do you mean to tell me that there can't be a 3-game improvement from 8 wins to 11 wins for each of these teams this year? It could absolutely happen. And I also think that there are times to where people assume that certain divisions will be the best, whether it's the NFC West, whether it's the AFC or NFC North, and it doesn't transpire that way because we didn't expect the Chiefs to be what they were last year. Then we didn't expect Mahomes to get hurt. The AFC North had 1 division winner last year. That playoff team, just 1 playoff team, which was their division winner. That's it. People didn't expect that. But what I'm telling you is the NFC South have answers at the quarterback spot now in my estimation. Bryce Young is the answer for Carolina, whom they believe. Baker Mayfield's been very good. But those 3 teams and the Saints I don't think will be as bad. And that's how I judge the division, where I think their worst team will be not as bad as a lot of people think. But the Falcons, the Bucs, and the Panthers can all do one thing. Run the football. And if they decide to do that throughout the duration of the season to stay healthy, I can easily see this being a division that turned around from a team not having a winning record at all to multiple teams being double-digit win records and having multiple teams in the playoffs. My last bold prediction for 2026. Before I tell you this, I'm not telling you I want this to happen. I'm telling you based on the situation, I believe this will happen. Like I said, Robert Saleh will get fired from the Jets when I made my bold prediction a few years ago. That ended up happening because I knew how the Jets were operating. Dan Quinn and Zach Taylor will not be head coaches in their respective roles prior to January. And this is why. In Dan Quinn's case, he's been there 2 seasons. So you might say, man, how are you going to fire a head coach in 2 years? He hasn't even had an opportunity to do anything. Mike McDaniel for the Dolphins lasted 4 seasons. Pete Carroll for the Raiders lasted 1 year. Not even a calendar year. All right, Brian Callahan, 1 year and some change. I'll give him 2 years at the most, but wasn't even there more than 2 years. Raheem Morris for the Falcons, canned after 2 years. Jonathan Gannon for the Cardinals, done as a head coach after 3 years. The NFL stands for not for long when you're not getting the job done, or when the owner perceives or the GM perceives you're not getting the job done. So if you're Dan Quinn, you had a great first year when Jane Daniels was healthy, and then he wasn't healthy last season. You went, 5-12? What happens this year if you, again, are under 500 and not making the playoffs? I don't think they'll hesitate to move on from you, even though I think Dan Quinn is a good coach. And Zach Taylor, 52-63 as a head coach, .453 winning percentage, and seems to be one of the safest NFL head coaches I've ever seen in my life. And Joe Burrow loves him. And I think that's why he still had his job. But don't make the playoffs this season. It'll be 4 consecutive years that the Bengals will not be in the playoffs. Again, I don't call for people to be fired, but I do know that with the change the Bengals are presumably trying to make, by the way they're trying to go defense and get better and build a better, well-rounded team, a well-rounded team starts with a head coach that can get the job done. And I just don't know how long Zach Taylor can live off a Super Bowl berth in which they didn't win the whole thing.